Hey everybody, Scott Dust here. Welcome to the channel. If you're interested in learning more about organizational behavior and organizational psychology, you're in the right place. The conversations we'll be having are about infusing science to better understand how to lead and manage ourselves and others. If you're interested, please subscribe. Thanks and good luck. Hey everybody, Scott Dust here with my co-host Louis DiCarlo. This is the Self-Leadership Experiment, a blog, vlog, and podcast where we bridge the gap between science and practice for all things organizational behavior. This is blog number 1, called, obviously, the Self-Leadership Experiment. So let's get started, Louis. What does leadership mean to you? And maybe in particular, what does self-leadership mean to you?
Leadership is just such a complex and multi-layered topic, right? And I think as we've gone through life, we've always had a vision of like who a leader is and who people telling us examples of leadership, right? And so some of us will identify a sports star or a politician or that favorite teacher of ours or that old coach, right? And you find these specific traits and qualities in that person that bring out not just the best in them, but the best in other people. So when I think of leadership, I often think like someone's ability to influence and motivate people to do things. And sometimes those things they actually don't really want to do. And so then the process of leadership, right? And self-leadership is, in my eyes, like what is self-leadership? It's reflecting on the complexities and the layers of leadership internally. Right. What is my type of leadership or style? And then what is your type of leadership and style, right? And what's the difference? And is there a right or wrong way? You tell me, right?
Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah. So the nerdy academic definition of leadership in its simplest form is just influencing others towards collective goals, right? That process. And I think you hit it on that first one. It's not a person, it's a process. And that's a good thing because that means that it's not innate, it's not this perfect set of traits. It's all sorts of different things, and it might be different for all sorts of people. And I think that's the first misnomer that kind of has to be uncovered is, there's no perfect way to do it, which opens up all sorts of opportunities, right? To like figure out for you individually, what does leadership mean and how to do it better. And I think that's part of the self-leadership experiment goal, right? We're trying to help ensure that people can think that through because it is really complex. Because there's so much variation, we have to actually like engage in this reflection process. So why, I guess, then is self-leadership important to you, or what does that mean to you individually?
Well, I think generally a lot of us strive to be in leadership roles, right? Some people don't, right? But many of us do. And I think that's my personality, right? I love to be in opportunities where I can lead other people, whether, as a parent, you don't have a choice, right? You have that leadership opportunity there, but in the workplace, right? That's something that you're working towards and you're striving towards. And that's more, that's a different type of leadership, right? And I think so often in the workplace, leadership is talked about. There's always a focus on it, but the development side of it, from an organizational standpoint, and then even internally, the self-leadership is challenging. And I don't know that most workplaces get it right. I think some focused on it more than others, but in my experience, I haven't really been anywhere that just has nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And a lot of times it's like relatively formulaic, right? Like this is our ideal version, or here's the prototype of leadership for this specific organization or division or team or whatever it might be. But it's almost purposefully oversimplifying a pretty complicated topic. And it's almost dismissing the fact that we're all going to be different. And so backing up a little bit, like self-leadership, this whole model really started with some researchers back in the 80s. So Chris Neck, Charles Manns, and a group of other academics started coming up with self-leadership as this idea of, okay, if leadership is influencing others towards collective goals, then self-leadership is this idea of I can also influence myself towards self-set goals. And so coming up with a framework, a process for doing that is certainly important, and it's going to be individualized. And then there's been other authors along the way that have come up with models. For example, a great book, Andrew Bryant, builds on the work of Chris Neck and Charles Manns. If you look up self-leadership, there's all sorts of models. My model, my understanding of it is this idea in its simplest form that self-awareness leads to self-regulation, right? The more aware you are of your situation, yourself, others, etc., the higher likelihood you have engaging in some behavioral change. That self-regulation in the moment, given the circumstances, you did something that you wanted to do. And then from there, the only way to really increase your self-awareness is to work on it, right? To self-reflect. And I think that self-reflection is the antecedent or the predictor of the extent to which you're going to engage in self-awareness or engage in that self-awareness in a way that's accurate. And then also, once you are self-aware, the more self-reflection that you do, the more likely you're going to see that self-awareness lead to self-regulation. And so that's what I think, that's why this is so important, right? Let's throw out some conversation pieces specific to the act of leadership so that people can chime in with their own interpretation and their own experience of it on their own terms in ways that helps them self-reflect so that they can then become more self-aware and in turn self-regulate in the moment.
I mean, listening to what you're saying, thoughts coming up in my mind is, I think sometimes, and for me personally, most times, it's easier to lead people as a leader of people than sometimes as the concept of self-leadership,
right,
and to lead myself, right? Because that requires, as you said, a bit more internal reflection, and then practicing to gain more of an awareness. And it's almost like a constant cycle, right? We often know what the qualities of a good leader are, no matter what the style is. We know what those different qualities are and the advantages and disadvantages of each. But finding the one that works for you, and then even more so, putting those into practice, like almost doing what we believe, is hard.
Yeah. It's a really good way to put it. I never thought about it that way. Leading others is probably easier than it is leading yourself, right? Because when you're leading others, in a way, it's relatively stable and it's almost more tangible, where when you're leading yourself, it's like all up inside your head. And in the moment, you might not necessarily do the right thing, or you might not just be aware of what the right thing is, right? Like, it's so much harder to take a step back or have this out of body experience that allows you to actually think about it the right way, or in a way that's going to be helpful to you.
Yeah, I think it requires a bit more discipline to be, the self-leadership process. And what I say in that is, like, how often do people really reflect on their own personal abilities and skills, strengths and weaknesses, and how they act in certain situations versus others, without like a bias of, I think I'm really good at everything. Or sometimes people may be the opposite and have no confidence and think I don't have the ability to do anything, right? And it's hard to see it through the right lens. And I would even say, like, while I'm thinking out loud here, the self-leadership process is also about seeking feedback from others to gain that more multi-viewed lens of yourself, right?
That's right. That's exactly it, right? I think that's what it can be. It's prompts for reflection. It is conversation pieces that you can bounce off a mentor or colleague or anyone within your social circle as things to consider for potentially how to improve and how to lead ourselves better. So I think it's a great framing for what we're trying to accomplish here for the rest of the self-leadership experiment. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining. For more resources on bridging the gap between science and practice for all things organizational behavior, you can go to scottdust.com, and from there you can subscribe to the monthly newsletter. And you can also find more evidence-based insight through social media, YouTube, and podcasts. See you next time.